everybody. I'm Ashley Bathgate, and I'm so glad you all came to this Festival of Emerging Artists. To you three composers who were, I'm going to talk to you and call you out, and hopefully everybody's going to have a bunch of questions. But this was a really, I think I posted this the other day, like it just felt like such an inspiration, I think, like during a long stretch of just not having work and um, and making music alone, you know what I mean, and having to do all of the back and forth digitally, in these kinds of Zoom meetings and sending audio back and forth and working on parts that way. But it was just because everyone was super available, I think, and willing and able and kind of as gung-ho as I was. And so I felt like it was just a fun process all along the way for several months. And then, of course, like the pieces come in and I practice them and we do a little bit of workshopping. And then I have this like added job of recording them and doing the video and learning how to like edit all of that, which was really fun. So I hope you enjoy this music. We are going to start with Adeliia Faizullina. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. And you are coming to, so you are the MVP of this evening. I just want to let everyone know that Adeliia is in Kazan. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the city.
Where it's currently, I think, what, 2 a.m.?
2:30 a.m.
Yeah, so bravo. Thank you for being with us and for being awake. Well, I'm going to let you tell everyone about this piece, Lonely Fire.
So hello everyone. I'm very happy to be here even at this time for me, and I'm here to hear all the premieres. I'm very excited, and thank you, Ashley, and thank you so much to the festival for organizing this collaboration. I really loved working with you, Ashley, on the piece. So the piece Lonely Fire is based on the poem by Tatar poet Musa Jalil. I really loved this poet from my childhood, and I found he was writing in Tatar, in my native language, and the language is from a Turkish group of languages. And I found this poet, any language you would translate his poems, they sound amazing. Like still there is his vibe in it. So I decided to use this poem for this piece, and then that was wonderful to hear from you, Ashley, that you would love to have a piece that would be for a singing cellist. You wanted to explore this way of playing music when you can sing and play your wonderful instrument. So I felt that was a really interesting idea, and I decided to explore that. And then used this poem that you are going to sing in the piece. I wrote couple of years ago a piece based on this poem, but then that was a translation to Russian. And the reason why I decided to use this poem again and to have it in English, I just really love the idea of the poem. It's a fire, and it's a lonely fire, and probably many of us these days were reflecting on that. But for many months, I felt lonely. Even we were meeting virtually, but still there were many times in the day when I felt lonely. And then a composer often is a lonely thing, writing the piece by your desk or anything that works for you. But yeah, the piece is about loneliness. But then the fire, the flame, to me is the imagery or the analogy of art. We still wanted to create, we still wanted to connect, we still wanted to give warmth to each other, share the art, share the thoughts, collaborate. And that's the energy. And so I felt the film really reflects those ideas. And then I wanted to say that the poem was translated by my wonderful friend Olga Baratova and her colleague Polina Gorbunova. So yeah, I hope you enjoy the piece. And again, I'm so happy actually you brought to the world this piece, because this is really written for you, and you did such a wonderful job. I'm very excited.
Thank you so much. I mean, I just want to say too that I felt so much that it was personal to me, and that you wrote, well, let's just say first, technically, like I've had to sing a lot of things for cello and voice, and you nailed the range like perfectly. I felt immediately so comfortable in my own voice, which is a gift. So I thank you for that. And furthermore, it was one of those pieces where I felt, I mean, I think you sent me one draft, which was like maybe partial, and then you sent a final draft, and it was, I remember reading it for the first time and just saying, oh, this is perfect. This is just, it's perfect. Like from start to finish, and it felt so right. And then I remember recording it, and I just kept, doing take after take, and enjoyed it and learned more from each take. I mean, that's part of the beauty of this process, actually, that we've been working with, recording at home and in our bedrooms, is that all of a sudden there's not the immediacy of an audience, where we can kind of be in solitude and be introverted and work through something. Like you're documenting it still, but it's so private. And that was a really beautiful thing, actually. I remember like recording very late at night, because it was one of the only moments that I could find quiet in my house, where my dogs were asleep and everybody was sleeping and there was no noise happening. And I remember just spending a few hours like very late at night, like playing through this piece, and it's so beautiful. And I thank you so much. So this is Lonely Fire.
Surrounded by shadows, shadows.
A stranger lost in vastness, a stranger lost in vastness, a stranger. Light, the light of fire, 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 fire. Through the gloom, will it be seen, seen? Will it be found, found? The sound flying over earth. Will it be heard, heard? Will it be answered, answered? Yay.
What a gorgeous piece. And Ashley, just a stunning performance. You just really brought it to life.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Adeliia.
Oh, thank you, Ashley. That was such a pleasure working with you.
And I just wanted to take a second to just underscore for what the composers did, right? Because like the rest of us, they were confronted with a totally changed world, and I think it took a lot of courage to pursue writing these pieces and getting through all of the conflicting emotions that we all had, and to create something so beautiful out of it. And then for Ashley, for you to bring it to life, it's just couldn't be happier. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so next we're going to hear Samantha Wolf's piece. She's going to tell us a little bit about it. Sam, take it away.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm just so stoked that we're finally here. It's April 1st and we get to share what we've been doing for the last, 8 months or so. It's been quite a process, but a really thrilling one, and I just feel so lucky to have been involved. I think I've been thinking a lot about the difference between what it's like to have an intense festival workshop experience versus a much longer incubation period for something that takes place over time. And really, all things considered, I'm just so grateful that things worked out this way for this piece, because I think it's quite different from what I would have written in that kind of intense sort of week-long focused period that festivals usually have. So I'm really grateful for that, and grateful to have been involved and to have had the chance to work so closely with Ashley. It's been really a huge privilege. My piece, Cocoon, is unusual for me in a few ways, but particularly because I had a really clear kind of visual sensory idea of what I wanted my music to feel like when it was premiered. So the piece is called Cocoon. And I think when I was first starting to imagine this, I was imagining stepping into a dark, warm room, possibly with low lights or candles flickering in the distance or something, and the sound kind of filling the space, it being really low, so low that you could kind of feel as well as hear the music. And I just wanted it to feel really calm and warm, and like stepping into a long, warm bath or something like that. So I think this is just sort of reflecting my urge to hibernate during the long, sad winter that we've all just come through. So straight away, Ashley was just super on board with what we could explore. So we talked a lot about things like scordatura and bow position, harmonics, and all of the kind of fine granular details, and finding all of the sort of nooks and crannies that we could kind of work with the cello. But I also wanted to use electronics, and we decided on using kind of a loop-based system so that we'd have sort of this drone that continues throughout the piece and becomes a little bit more active and manipulated as the piece goes on. So you'll hear the gradual increase in the level of the drone, increased reverb, increased playing with EQ and that sort of thing, which is really fun. Plus Ashley is playing the cello along with that really active drone there. So it was really fun to play with these elements. I still consider this a work in progress because I think it's going to work a little bit differently live, and there are a few parameters I want to see if I can figure out how to make work in a live in-person performance context. But it's been such a pleasure to work on this, and I think, Ashley, you just captured the vibe of it perfectly, and I'm so glad that we get to share it.
Thank you, Sam. Yeah, and I just want to say a couple things too. The idea of this piece has a kind of drone element to it, and I'm playing one very low note and kind of having variation on that one note. But forever, I have found endless possibility and endless satisfaction in exploring the drone. And I think there are few things that are more pleasing and rewarding for a musician, I think, than the freedom to just kind of like get into this meditation with it all. And so your piece allowed me to do that and to explore like all, the sonic possibilities between the fingerboard and the bridge. So not only with the bow, with the left hand, you asked for a few techniques, which were new for me too, and kind of making these different sounds. So I was able to incorporate those into my repertoire. And it's extremely, again, it's like personal and introverted, and there's this joy that I feel when I get to do that. It's like, sometimes I have all these, pieces with a million notes, or there's a million parts and different things going on, and it's always wonderful to just focus on one thing and do it really, really well. And I felt this with Cocoon, and I felt like we have so much further to go with it, as you said. I think how it will work in a live scenario is that I would be manipulating and triggering these electronics myself, and as well as altering the sounds coming from my instrument, I'll be also manipulating those sounds with my feet through various pedals and software programs. So yeah, let's hear Cocoon by Samantha Wolf. Yes. I love
Feels
it.
like the perfect piece for the past year. Feels,
right?
Like the best of the last year. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that so much.
I wanted to add a couple things that I was thinking of while I was watching it. Is that I used to be always very jealous of my colleague Robert Black, who is the bass player in the Bang Out of Can All Stars, because there's something just really special about those low resonating notes, right? I mean, whether they're arco or pizz, and we would often have lines together or some sort of harmony, and I felt this incredible safety and vicarious living, I guess, like through his sound when I would play with him in that capacity. And so this is one of the reasons I really love this piece was like you lowered, we did a score to tour and we lowered the C string to a G. and I'm playing in that realm of like the, the double bass, and it's so satisfying because the string tension is less, and it oscillates differently. The vibration, the overtones change, and you were hearing that a little bit throughout the piece. And that's the other thing, is that so all three of these pieces, and we can talk more about this later, but all three of them pushed me into an area in my music making and creativity that I had always kind of wanted to explore more. Number one was singing more with my instrument, and I remember talking to you guys and saying, well, I've sang a lot with cello where I'm humming, or I'm doing oohs and ahs, or I'm, doing a lot of straight tone, and that I was wanting something that was more song-like and that could really, express and show what my voice can do in that way. And Adeliia certainly did that. And then, Sam, you with this note, and I can explore this like wonderfully low tone, putting on a totally different cap, and, the exploration of the overtones. So, you have the fundamental note, which is this G, for those of you who are tuning in. And then you have all of these partials and overtones that happen. So you're hearing like dee da 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 da, that kind of resonate depending on where the bow is placed between the fingerboard and the bridge, like where it makes contact on the actual string. And one of the things I had always wanted to do was actually have the time to be able to control some of that. Like often we play these pieces and it's very random. Like we're just kind of, oh, cool, that popped out. Oh, that's great. Like so exciting. But rarely do we spend the time working on like, well, if I play just a millimeter higher, I might get this note. If I play 2 inches lower, I get this note. And so through the working on your piece and recording it, and when you have amplification, you obviously hear all of these things more. Yeah, I got to play around with that for the first time and be like, oop, there it is. There's the sweet spot. You know what I mean? Like now knowing where they are. So thank you for that, challenge. And yeah, love it for those reasons. So I guess we have one more piece to share with you, and it is by Ryan Lindveit. Ryan, do you want to tell us about your piece?
Sure. Yeah. Well, hi, Ashley. Hi. Congratulations to both of you. Those are so beautiful. It's such a pleasure to be on a program with you all. And it was such a great honor to get this opportunity to write for you, Ashley, because, the original plan was we were going to write for a string orchestra and of Next Fest Fellows, which was a very exciting idea. But then, of course, we couldn't do that. So, writing for you was a dream, honestly. Like so many of my teachers have written for you, and so yeah, I'm a fanboy. But I remember whenever we had our first Zoom, like a year ago, and you were talking about the things that you like to sing, and I was like, so what did you listen to? And you're like, well, I listened to Patsy Cline growing up. And I was like, wait, she listened to country music growing up too? Because I'm from Texas, and like country music was sort of just like the ambient cultural input that like you get just by existing. So my piece feels kind of similar to Adele's in that it's like I'm going back to something from my childhood that I hadn't really thought about in years. Like when the pandemic started, I started to feel homesick for the first time because I had always been able to go back. And at that point I was like, I don't know when I'm ever going to go back. And so I started listening to country music, which I never do. And it really brought me back home, and it really helped me. And one of those songs I listened to, there was a line, and the line goes, how do you keep your feet on the ground when you know you were born to fly? Which like just encapsulated all my feelings. And that line got stuck in my head on repeat because I would listen to that song when I was going on runs, and it got stuck there. And I was like, well, I have to write a piece about it. And Ashley likes Patsy Cline, so it's sort of related. And yeah, so this piece is about like writing music that wants to be itself, but also wants to escape itself, and then also wants to be nostalgic for itself, which is sort of like how I felt about those were all the feelings I had at the very beginning of the pandemic. And it's also a very virtuosic piece, as you will see. but it's based on this tune, this country tune, but it doesn't sound like country music ultimately. But I also just wanted to write something really beautiful. Do you have something to add to that, Ashley?
I do. Well, that you did, and I think you have an incredible gift for lyricism and harmony, Ryan. And that was like evident the minute that I first read through the piece. And what was I going to say? Well, so it sort of ties into this, you know, great things come in threes, I guess. And I've had this happen before, and especially in the past year in a lot of different areas of my life and certainly my music making, where I feel like I've been so lucky where you have these concerts or these projects, right, with people, and you get three just radically different works, or, you know, however many. And that is the best thing that can ever happen, right? Because not only do you have this really interesting program to present to everybody, but for a musician, that's such an incredible journey, right? It's like when you have, like, it's like you're visiting three other planets, and your piece is very different from the other two, which we're going to hear. And it also had, so I mentioned earlier that I felt like each one sort of challenged me to explore different, you know, facets of my cello playing and my music making. And there's always somebody who really pushes you. And I felt like this time it was you, where we had this wonderful Zoom session, and we were both like, I think we spent like almost 3 hours actually, like working through the cello part and, you know, bouncing things back and forth and trying different ways. And I spent so much time, and I on this piece, like I had to invent some techniques, and I had to try really sort of interesting creative fingerings that I hadn't done before, and you know, the stamina, or like, you know, this and that. And it's those pieces which are really amazing actually to have thrown at you, because they're the ones that like push you into another realm with your instrument, you know, your cello playing, or your, you know, whatever instrument it is you play. And you have to think outside the box. And I'm never a person, I hate to say no. I hate saying no, and I hate saying that I can't do it. It bothers me, like when I can't do something. I'm extremely competitive and stubborn. So it's like anything he was going to write for me, I couldn't come back and be like, I can't do it, please write something else. And, you know, so, and you were he did change a couple little things for me because he's so nice. But at the end, I just felt like, oh, I'm kind of a better cellist after like working on this piece. And now I have a bunch of techniques that I didn't have before. And the, you know, again, it's like your mind just keeps expanding with all, this is why I do new music and why I choose to do it for a living, I think, is because I'm always growing, I'm always learning. And there's always this like room and this next level to get to, right? So thank you for that. Thank you for this piece. So let's hear it. Yay! I wish I could hear everybody. I'm imagining hearing everyone clapping right now. Oh, thank you,
amazing.
Ryan.
So amazing. I mean, that playing and the piece just together, you said it made you a better cellist. It made me a better listener. I think. Really amazing work to both of you. And you're not even sweating, Ashley. That's the thing that's the most amazing.
I know. I was just saying that the thing I will miss about virtual performances is being able to watch your own performance while it's happening and not and having pink lights and like not having to be sweating and like so tremendously nervous. So I'll miss that part of it.
We can open this up for questions, because I think that we just saw three incredibly different visions of solo cello playing. But I just wanted to start by saying that one of the best parts of the last year for me has, in reimagining what the festival is and what we do and how we support young artists and how we support our guest artists is giving these three young composers the gift of being able to write a piece for you. And I think I'm just so grateful to you for taking this on and putting such incredible integrity into the process. And I know that I can speak for the composers that they are too. And it just makes me feel so hopeful, actually, that we're in good hands with the next generation of composers. And it's just been a real highlight for me. So I want to say thank you to you, Ashley, and thank you to the three composers for your incredible vision and perseverance through all of this. What a gift you've given all of us now too.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks for making this happen. Yeah, it's been an incredible process, and I think this is the way it was supposed to go. And I'm really glad that we reshaped this festival and this program, and that I got to work with the three of you and with you, Peter, and like we wouldn't have had so many great talks and interaction. Even like we would have been isolated to 5 days or 4 days, and And it's been, and you guys were incredibly patient with me while I was like working through this and trying to figure out all my technology and, bringing them to life and bringing them to a finished point. So nothing but love and gratitude. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, let's open it up. And while we're waiting for that, please feel free to put those in the chat, and I'll watch the chat, or else to unmute yourself and ask those questions. And while we're waiting for people to process the incredible music they just heard and think of some questions, I just put in the chat again a link to our website and to Ashley's website, and again just reiterating that we wanted to keep artists of all kinds working in every way, and so we would love your help in doing that. Anybody have any questions? Speechless.
How to get the music? I hear. I think the question is, I would be very interested in finding out how to get the music. Well, I think we can ask the composers this. Is it published yet, or, one of the beautiful things is that I'll play it. I get to play it first here and then live, but after that, it gets to go out into the world, and any cellist can perform it. But I mean, you guys can speak for yourselves, but I imagine that they will soon be published and available, and then we'll probably at some point like make an album or record them, to commercially release it.
So I'm not super protective of my score, so I'm happy just to share privately the score in its current form, bearing in mind that it's an advanced draft and not the final thing yet. So I'd be happy to share that with anyone who's interested.
Any other questions? Is there a way that we could bring everybody into view so I can see all these wonderful faces that have been listening to us? There they are. Yay. Lots of familiar faces. Hi.
Feel free to turn on your cameras and reveal yourselves.
Beautiful. Thank you for listening, watching.
And I just wanted to say we can now see Aaron Kernis. Hey, Aaron. I wanted to make a big shout out to Aaron and also to Derek Vermel for their incredible work identifying these great composers and helping me to envision what last year's festival would become, and just being incredible mentors for the artists. Thank you so much, Aaron.
You're welcome. Great concert, great event. Wonderful playing, Ashley. And you've been such an inspiration.
Thanks, Aaron.
To everybody. So, yeah.
Well, great.
I'm trying.
I just have a question for each of the composers. I mean, now having written this and heard it, and then heard it in the context of your colleagues. I mean, you all got a chance to really interact with each other too, and you're all such different artistic voices. But somehow I feel, and I don't think it's just Ashley making this work together, right? Somehow I feel that this works really well together as a program. I just wanted to ask the composers kind of any thoughts that you have about the whole process and about the performance, and anything crossing your minds now.
I can take a stab at that one. So this definitely made me a much better composer, especially writing for cello. Part of like working with Ashley is like I knew she was so good that I could try a lot of things, and I wasn't sure if they were going to work, but most of the time she found a way to make them work. And then like in small cases she was like no. But so that my piece I think is still a bit of a work in progress, because there is a place for this piece to be played by cellists after Ashley, and I don't know if they can figure those things out, so it made me so much more aware of exactly what the hand has to do at one time on the cello, because I have her fingering notes and plucking notes with the same hand at the same time, which sounds really easy whenever I hear it on my notation program, but just watching her, like the cello is such a tactile instrument, and the way these videos are shot, it's so like informative to see. And also for me, it's like, I'm always like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, like at the things that I made you do. But yeah, that's my take on this. And thank you for that 3-hour session where we went through like basically measure by measure, and you like showed me, okay, this is why this is challenging, and is it worth it? And I was like, well, yeah, it's kind of worth it, but this one is not. Like that was such a really invigorating experience.
Well, and that's the beauty actually of collaborating this way, and I prefer to collaborate this way where it's not like we're connected in the way that we're discussing this and kind of developing it together and working on it, and it becomes a very personal experience and something that feels like it's written for you when you can have this kind of back and forth and dialogue with a composer, which is not always possible. You know what I mean? Sometimes it just doesn't work out, everybody's schedules, or you know, for whatever reason, or sometimes I get a piece and it's just like, I wrote you this piece, here, it's done, thanks, you know, and that wasn't this, and I'm really grateful for that. And I think lots of cellists are going to play this piece. And I was thinking, you know, that's another reason, like, I never like to say no to things, because I always am aware that the younger generation, all those whippersnappers, so, you know, are gonna, like Jonah Kernis is gonna play this piece, and he's gonna like figure out things that that I didn't figure out. So I try not to say no, because but so and so played it, or like this will happen. Anything is possible, and so I think these pieces will have a very long life. Yeah. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
There's a couple of questions and comments in the chat, I think, which are interesting. I think that they were pushing limits on the cello. I suppose that the composers are not cellists, but Ashley made it possible. Yeah, I'm a total fanboy. He. That's both in the chat and just the way I feel right now. So I feel like those could have been my words. The composers none of you are cellists, right? What instruments did you start with, or do you still play?
So maybe I can answer this question. I started as a pianist, and then I did study voice. I sing a lot. And actually, this is co-response with the previous question. Ashley expressed the idea of having a text, not like humming or any like extended technique, voice singing. So, and me personally, I do a lot of extended technique on my singing, like just, I don't know, really experimenting. But here, that was one of the first times when I used a text for the voice line. And so, yeah, that was exploration for me as well. But yeah, I don't play any string instrument. I have a violin. It is sitting on my piano right now, but it's like just to have it in my hands, because I always love touch instruments, just to have a connection to their bodies as well, like to feel them. But yeah, I don't really play it, but I would love to maybe take some lessons just to understand it better. But yeah, and I play some wind instruments, like folk instruments. Kurai, that's a Tatar folk with wind instrument. So anyway.
Ryan and Sam, what's your background in music? Instrumentally, have you played instruments?
Yeah, I grew up playing euphonium and trombone. So the same register as the cello, but quite different. My first relationship to the cello was playing the Bach G major prelude on euphonium, which is kind of funny. And then I also play piano a bit.
I, growing up, was primarily a saxophone player, and I still play a little bit, although not very well, I will admit. But I'm always grateful that that was my instrument, because it exposed me to a lot of different genres, like really early on, things like jazz and pop and funk and improvisation and stuff like that. So I'm really grateful that that was my main instrument growing up. These days I joke that my main instrument is like broken objects and wine glasses, because the first thing I do whenever I'm in a new person's kitchen or a hotel kitchen is just take all the wine glasses out and start tapping them to see what they sound like.
So there's another question from the chat. Ashley, can you tell us where it became precipitously difficult to play? Can you show us?
Well, I can't totally show you because I don't have my cello here with me. But are we talking about the last piece, I think, Ryan's piece?
I think it was just a general question, but Ryan's piece is a good place to start.
Well, so in that one, yeah, the arpeggios, like you saw, like where I was kind of doing, we call it bariolage, where we're crossing the strings, going up and down and playing like I think that was difficult. I had to come up because there are a lot of these fifths crossing the strings, and you need the full weight of your left hand to kind of press down the strings. And in some cases, I was actually doing one finger per string crossing the string, and had to be creative in the direction that I was heading and where I was coming from. So there's a lot of thought in many pieces that I play and have learned, and that this includes not only contemporary repertoire, but also very traditional repertoire. I think, and I had a teacher in college who was very conscious of this and was very great about explaining like his musical reasoning, not only a technical reasoning for a fingering or a bowing moving in one direction or another. And I paid attention closely to that and always carried it with me. And so when I work on these new pieces, there's just a lot of thought and planning that goes into where am I headed? What fingering makes the most sense? What kind of bow pressure facilitates a better sound, or the right sound, or the quality? You know, do I want an airy quality? Do I want a more core to the sound? Does it not need to be bright and brassy and closer to the bridge? So there's a lot of these kind of micro decisions that are made when you're learning a piece. Same things with Sam. Like I said, it's like focusing on bringing different pitches out, and is it the right, like playing, you saw in her piece, I was doing a lot of variation with the vibrato in the left hand, a very slow vibrato, quicker vibrato, almost shaken vibrato where I'm actually just moving up and down pitch wise. And that just doesn't happen automatically, right? You kind of have to practice these things and cultivate them. And I like to make sure they sound good, or at least that I think they sound good. So even if it's like a very noisy or can be a more unpleasant sound to the ears, I want to be proud of it, you know what I mean? And I want to feel that I own it and that I've executed it in a way that I feel in total control of. Same thing with the voice. It's like it's about breath control and how you end the phrases. I'm not a trained singer. I mean, I've sung since I was 3 years old. And I love singing, but I've really never had voice lessons. So there's a lot of, and I grab things here and there from my colleagues, or over the years, someone might give me a little tidbit here and there or tell me something. But for the most part, I'm kind of winging it, and I have to figure those things out. And it's incredibly difficult to sing while you're sitting down, right? So we feel better and we can use our diaphragm more fully when we're standing up, when you don't have a piece of wood like jamming into your abdomen and your chest. And a lot of the times, and the struggle that I have singing while playing the cello is that I'm vibrating and I'm doing all these things physically on this instrument, right? And so the instrument is like shaking my body. So then I have to figure out the way to not only be able to do this seated, but to separate what's happening like on the instrument from what's happening in my voice, because what you don't want is a going on, like when you don't want it to be going on. So there are all sorts of challenges. I think, what else, like in Ryan's piece, there was one other thing. well, like moving double stops that are these triple stops, actually, like these broken chords that are kind of progressing as well, and making them seamless. And I think a challenge for any lyrical instrument, such as a cello, a violin, and not an, counter example would be like the piano that can play harmony chords, or a harp, where we usually have one line. And if we're written something with double stops and triple stops and chord progressions, we're not just placing our hands down, right? Or mallets. It's more sneaky and slithery, and kind of this negotiation between the two hands. And how do you maintain a line still being lyrical, right? In that progression, so that you hear that melody over the top, and you hear the harmony underneath it in these chords, and kind of making that sound good. I think, the chaconne, Bach's chaconne, is a great example of that. Like you see the violinist is just like, every time I watch a violinist play that piece, it's like, oh my God, it looks so hard. It's so hard. Like they're just really fighting and struggling, and like can sound amazing, but you're just aware of like how hard they're working during that 17-minute, no rest, no break at all, sort of, feat that they're attempting. So I hope that covers a few of, I guess, examples of like the difficulties of it, but sure feels good when you get it right.
There's another question. Composers, I'd be interested in seeing a page or two of the notation. What program do you use, and do you write it out by hand for the most part?
Who wants to take that one?
What do you start by sketching on paper, or do you go straight to a notation program, or what's your process? I know that each composer just has a separate process. Some composers work directly with sound and a digital audio workstation, and then kind of work backwards to a notation. It's always interesting. What's your process, and what do you use for program?
Oh, well, mine kind of changes every piece, I think, depending on kind of what the goals are and what the starting point is. I have found that during the pandemic, I've moved into software and computer notation earlier than I was previously. Part of this is simply because my coping mechanism has been to keep myself super duper busy, and so the time to write has been somewhat compressed. But some of it is also just that I'm working a lot more with kind of digital mediums, and so I'm not sort of taking sketches to a musician in person, but I'm sort of figuring out something on the page and putting it in notation really quickly.
I'm the person who asked that question. I'm both a composer and a cellist. And hi, Ashley. Great concert, by the way.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Wonderful pieces, wonderful playing, everything. Okay, now I came to composing like a little later, but when I began, we didn't have the notation programs yet. So I began writing by hand. And I found, because I also like to draw, my music in a way was like a little different. I was more comfortable actually writing with a pencil, except I knew how to do parts after writing an orchestra piece. That was crazy because we couldn't extract parts. And so now when I write a piece, I think, oh my God, if only I was writing by hand, I would be able to express what I'm composing a lot easier than that. So I'm just curious, do you actually have, what programs do you use? I mean, I use Finale, just for the notation. Do you use Finale, Sibelius, etc.?
What's the free one now that I've been using? It's like Museo or Muso, MuseScore, MUSE score. Because I don't really compose all that often, and I don't use Sibelius, and I find Sibelius to be extremely like counterintuitive and ridiculous.
Right. It could drive you crazy.
And Finale, I never got on that bandwagon, and a lot of people, sort of like, it became like the runner-up software, right? And so then and Sibelius is also expensive. It's like either you buy it for several $100s, or you can rent it like monthly, and even that I wasn't using it enough to justify that. So
Right.
I downloaded this Muse score, and I actually like it, and I find it pretty easy to use. And the other one, this is a question, but I'm curious, has anyone had an experience with, what's the one? Is it Dorico? The one that's like I want that to be perfected, because that's my jam. Like, I want to write it by hand digitally, right?
Right.
And then have like it magically appear on the page in print in a nice font and be all pretty and stuff. So has anybody had experience with that? And like, is that going to happen?
You can write that one by hand on the computer screen, Dorico?
Supposedly, but everybody keeps telling me either it sucks or it's in like beta mode. So
okay.
I don't know. That's why I'm asking. I was like, has anybody had an experience with it where they're like, yes, this is working. This is great.
I, in addition to composition, I take sound design classes over at the School of Drama here, and they are in the process of moving everything over to Dorico now. So it's getting.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
That's great news. That makes me very happy. Thank you, Sam.
Because I just completed a piece, a film score for this thing that's going on in Chicago, and I was thinking, boy, the next thing I write, I'm doing it by hand. I'll just put it in a PDF, because there was so many sounds I wanted to get, and it just took me out. I was spending all this time just to get it on the page, and I still don't know if I really wrote it. And so I just began to write in with words, sound like, like a whisper sound, whatever, as opposed to having, having a notation. I mean, I don't even know how I would notate that with the software, with Finale. So I'm just wondering what everybody used. Ryan, for instance, what did you? Well, that was pretty straightforward in a way. It was the other two pieces.
Yeah, I mean, mine was all notated music. It was Finale.
Right.
I mean, I've been using Finale since I was in middle school. So like I started composing with Finale. So it's not like I had to move to Finale. So I feel actually more native to Finale than to like handwritten notation.
Finale is okay, but then when I want to do something like pitching and bowing and like a harmonic thing at the same time, it's just, well, maybe I just, I spend so much time just working out the technical aspects of the notation that it just drives me crazy. Like Adeliia, is that your name? I'm sorry, I can't see. It's like yes, I'm looking at an iPad. Yes. For instance, I'm looking at a tiny iPad. What notation program do you use, if I may ask?
Yes, sure. Actually, currently, I'm not using any notation program. I am using a Braille notation. I first write down my ideas into a Braille score, and then I dictate it to my assistant. And my assistants, they work in Finale and in Sibelius. But at the moment, I'm in the process of learning and getting the accessible software for me that would work for me. And yeah, that's a project that I'm working on actually. But this is really an interesting topic to me. I'm wondering if that would be a handwriting, if I could type in like a Braille code and that would be translated to the score. That would be really cool as well, I think.
That's interesting.
Love that idea. Yeah,
me too.
And when you're working with the composer, like as you're writing the piece, you can say, oh no, but I want it to sound like a whisper, or I want this. So you're actually verbally giving instructions, as opposed to just having it on the page and just submitting it to somebody, and without the collaborative aspect.
I always think it's helpful I like when composers will send me the Sibelius file or something that I can play around with and edit. And many times what happens is when I do have this kind of intense collaboration with composers, I will ask for that and I'll kind of make my own part. You know what I mean? Or I'll like fool around with things, or
Right.
you know, sometimes you want to change the beaming in something. You want to change how it's represented on the page, or how it's spelled, or it's personal, right, to each musician, and depending on the instrument you play, or if it's an ensemble, if it's you're reading off a score, and it's kind of like enharmonically notated versus an exported part that I want spelled differently. You know what I mean? I want to read it differently. So that's always helpful, and I'm always happy when composers are kind of amenable to that, so that we can craft it together. And then I kind of like send them back all of my edits, and they, you know, take them or don't take them, but we kind of like it's this Frankenstein, you know, everything kind of mushed together. But these pieces were all like very already started from a really high place, like notation wise, and how they were written. They were beautifully crafted. I always say it's as much about the part as it is about the music and how it reads and how it looks and how organized it is, and the time and effort like that goes into that, because we all know it takes many hours actually to do that kind of work. And so I'm extremely appreciative that they came at me already in this very like finished, legible and beautiful state.
Yeah, see, that's the thing I worry about, is that when I submit a piece that it's not exactly, I mean, everything is, you know, beautiful, whatever, but it might not be exactly what I want because of the finale, you know, I'm just not expressing it as well. Whereas my handwritten pieces, I think, were clearer, but that's just my age, you know, I began writing by hand. So maybe it's just that kind of a thing. Whereas if I began like in the digital world, Samantha, and so when you began this piece, you just started sketching it out on with Dorico, is that?
Oh, I still use Sibelius. That was what I grew up.
Oh, okay.
So I'm waiting for the functionality to kind of, just because at this point I've figured out all of the nooks and crannies and how to kind of make it work for what I want to do. So there were lots of kind of squiggly lines in my piece, and basically I just wrote those into like a paint type program and then imported them to graphics and resized them. But I am looking forward to Dorico being more functional for sure.
Right. Okay, great. I appreciate the answers. Thank you.
Well, this has just been just an amazing evening, and like I said, this was one of the highlights of the last year, to be able to have this come out of the situation that we've all found ourselves in. And I just want to say thank you again to Aaron Kernis and Derek Bermel for helping to put together this amazing group of composers, and to the amazing group of composers for the music and the perseverance and all of your creativity. It's just, I'm just blown away. And finally, to Ashley, I think we can all just marvel at what she put together with all this. And it's the greatest gift that you could give to these young composers. It'll last them their lives, I know. And so I just wanted to, absolutely, I wanted to say thank you to everybody who came, and this is part of a series that we're doing, that we've been doing throughout the pandemic. We have lots of great content coming up, including, as I mentioned at the beginning, lots of different ways to think about making a career in music, including we have a financial workshop coming up next week, and then some workshops on practicing. We're putting together a virtual festival where I can announce this year for the first time that Aizuri Quartet, an amazing young string quartet, will be the quartet in residence for our Composer Festival this year. If you don't know them, they're just incredible. And they will be serving, it takes 4 people to do what Ashley did this year. That's why we had to get a quartet to replace Ashley as the next installment of the workshop. So we have lots of great things coming up, and we're all about supporting young artists and about supporting artists. So I would just ask you again, if you're able to make a contribution, help us for this year's incarnation of the next Festival of Emerging Artists, and with our composer workshop. And thank you so much again to all of you for being here. And thank you again to Ashley. Big round of applause. Thank you. And we hope to see you.
Thank you so much
next week and again and again. And thank you, Ashley. Ashley.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Thank you. Thank all of you for coming. Thanks for making my evening. This was really fun. Awesome. Can't
Night,
wait
everybody.
to
Take
do
care.
it again. Good night.
Thank
Take
you.
care.